Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for hitting the record button, Torin. This coffee hour is going to be recorded for those who can't be there today. And if you are here, if you want to review anything later, you're able to find this and all of our coffee hours, as well as recordings of workshops, certification help, newsletter previews, and a lot more on our YouTube channel. You can just search YouTube for Sustainable CT and you'll find us there. We'll also go ahead and put a link to that in the chat as well. You can also find a direct link to our YouTube channel and our monthly newsletter, which is called Actions and Impact. We'll put a link in the chat for that as well. If you registered for this coffee hour, you probably already received our newsletter, but if you're not receiving it, please do check it out. It's pretty informative as well as fun. You can easily subscribe at sustainablect.org by clicking the sign up button at the very bottom of the page. And then while you're on our website, be sure to check out this month's episode of The Impact, which is our podcast. New episodes are available every 15th of the month on our website, on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. This month, we have a really great conversation with Marianne Chinati, who is the Economic and Community Development Director at the town of Putnam. The town is doing some really great work through its Arts Council, and they've made arts and culture a substantial part of their economic development strategy, which is a very timely conversation given our topic today. So please feel free to check out this month's episode of The Impact to hear what Putnam is doing in the arts and culture scene. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Kimberley Parsons-Whitaker from the Department of Economic and Community Development's CT Office of the Arts, who will be discussing Connecticut's Cultural District. During her presentation, feel free to put any questions in the chat, and then we'll also have a Q&A after her presentation. Thank you again.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Let me just share my screen real quick. And is that coming up, Lily?
Yes.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. I need to move this out of the way for a second. So I have provided in the chat, sorry, I just need to move this out of the way. I provided in the chat some basic information, an overview of the Cultural District Program from the process perspective, and that is on the Office of the Arts website. I've provided a link to DRSOs, the Designated Regional Service Organizations. Those are the regional arts councils across the state. A link to, then on the marketing and tourism side of things, a link to ctvisit.com. There is a special page for cultural districts, designated cultural districts, and you can look on that. And it's highly visual. Our tourism page is quite nice. And you can link on to all the cultural districts that are listed there. And then also on the marketing side, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. We have a partnership with Fox 61 Television, and we are about to start our second year of the Connecticut Cultural Districts feature on Friday mornings, every Friday morning starting in March through October of this year. So those are some fun links that you can look through. So by way of introduction, my name is Kimberley Parsons-Whitaker. I am a community development specialist at DECD in the Office of the Arts. My role at DECD is focused primarily on the intersection of arts, culture, creative entrepreneurs, government, and community engagement. And so Cultural District falls right in the heart of everything that I do. On a personal note, I am a conservatory trained musician. I've had a professional career in opera, in theater, and in concert prior to working in economic and community development. So working at DECD and in the Office of the Arts particularly is bringing together my two professional lives, actually. So today we're going to talk about the Cultural District Program, but I would like to start by putting this in the context of the creative economy in Connecticut. So the Connecticut Office of the Arts was created as a standalone agency to be a state arts agency federal partner with the National Endowment for the Arts. We are funded with both state and federal funds, and we must match all federal funding we receive with state dollars. So, a little bit about how our organization, how our agency works. Um, the Office of the Arts is embedded at DECD, Department of Economic and Community Development, which enables us to ensure that arts and culture are a basic tenet of the agency's strategy to ensure that Connecticut communities thrive. Um, so, in Connecticut, we are pretty well aware that arts and culture is a critical economic driver of vibrant communities. The arts and culture industry in Connecticut supports jobs, generates tax revenue, strengthens tourism and the visitor economy, contributes to community vibrancy, and helps to preserve authentic cultural experiences. Nationally, according to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the creative economy accounts for 4.4 of the U.S. economy and nearly 5 million jobs. This is only exceeded by the retail sector. These jobs, when we talk about the creative economy, we're talking about jobs in the performing arts, museums, design services, fine arts education, photography, publishing, broadcasting, film, manufacturing of arts projects, and more. In Connecticut, arts and culture is a $12.8 billion industry. There are over 54,000 jobs in the state's arts and culture industries. That's 3.17% of the state workforce, with a total compensation of $6 billion. So that's no small potatoes from an economic standpoint. From a qualitative standpoint, arts and culture helps tell the story of Connecticut as a vibrant place to live, to work, to raise a family. Connecticut, as we know, is a very small state, and nearly everyone has access to local cultural activities. And it's a creative state. Historically, this has informed the growth of industry in our state over the years. So, the Office of the Arts administers programs that support this creative economy in Connecticut, including the Connecticut Cultural District Program. So, the Cultural District Program was created by the Connecticut General Assembly in 2019. In that legislation and in the accompanying guidance, a cultural district is established through a collaboration between the municipality, private stakeholders, and community organizations. There are requirements, and we're going to go into this in detail, that ensure there is representation from the creative, the business, and the governmental sectors on a cultural district commission. So, what is a cultural district? It is fundamentally a walkable, compact center of artistic and cultural activities that contribute to social vibrancy and the economic health of the community. Cultural districts foster community wealth by attracting people and businesses so the community can profit from its own cultural enterprises. Cultural districts are special places where community members congregate. And in Connecticut, as each of our communities is unique, each cultural district looks different. Why establish a cultural district? There are some basic reasons. We have 15 cultural districts right now in Connecticut. I'm going to show you a map in a little bit. But the reasons to promote and encourage artists, entrepreneurs, and creative businesses, to promote tourism and increase visitation, improving the quality of life for residents, that they live in a community that has arts and culture embedded in how the community functions and how people relate to one another. Cultural districts strengthen the distinctive character of communities, and they can contribute to a plan to drive economic growth and expand the tax base. Having a cultural district simply highlights the culture and history of your community. And now that we're getting a critical mass of cultural districts, we're finding that it's really contributing to Connecticut's cultural assets. Mindful that this is a sustainable CTE audience, municipalities participating in sustainable CT certification may be able to meet criteria and receive points for action item number 4, vibrant and creative cultural ecosystems through the cultural district designation. So specifically under categories 4.1 and 4.2, the cultural district application process includes inventorying and mapping cultural assets, as well as showing evidence of supporting arts and creative culture. So, step by step, here are the steps in order. I'm going to go through each one of them in detail, but I've divided it out into 5 basic steps. Number 1 is assessing your readiness, determining if your municipality meets the standards and criteria. Step number 2 is that asset mapping, identifying and mapping the inventory and location of cultural assets. Step number 3 is appointing your cultural district commission, and I have some detailed information on that as well. Step number 4, submitting a letter of intent to your DRSO, your Regional Arts Council, to establish a cultural district. And step number 5 is compiling all of the required material and submitting your application. So I'm going to do a sprint, pretty high level overview of the steps, the first steps in becoming a cultural district. We are allowing plenty of time for Q&A, just so that you know that. So step number 1, contact your designated regional service organization through the application process. So in this orange box is a list of DRSOs around the state of Connecticut. DRSOs are local field offices that provide arts and culture leadership at a regional level. Your DRSO can advise you on creating a steering committee, on coordinating efforts and planning public engagement community conversations. We have some DRSOs that are really expert at helping guide the asset mapping process. So in the chat, there is a link to the Office of the Arts page that lists all of the DRSOs, their contact information, and if you don't know which one your community belongs to, there's a list of all the municipalities in each one of those DRSOs. Continuing on step number 1. So you've reached out to your DRSO, you've started that conversation. They're helping to give you some perspective, helping to guide you, offering to meet with you. This first big step is simply determining if your municipality meets the standards and criteria. In the chat, the link to the Office of the Arts website, the overview, has those standards and criteria as well. So the standards and criteria, as well as the governance model options, what kind of model of a commission or a committee or advisory committee, and those membership requirements of that commission or committee. The requirements of a cultural district are included, how to apply, obviously, and the process used to evaluate the application so that when your DRSO and when the Office of the Arts receives an application for cultural district designation, there's a certain, it's not a formula that we follow, but there's information on our website that sort of helps clarify exactly what happens once you submit the application. Step number 2, and this is where sort of the meat of the process really begins locally, identifying and inventorying the location of cultural assets in your community. So both as I'll call it the steering committee, and this is the organizing group that's exploring cultural district designation, even if it's before you have an official commission. So when I use the term steering committee, that's what I'm referring to. So both with the steering committee and especially during the public engagement community conversation process, the community will identify and begin to map the arts, cultural, and creative economy assets in the proposed district. Now, the format of this mapping is very flexible. I have up on this screen two examples directly from their applications, the town of New Milford's application, and then on the right, the Bantam application. So you can see, and we have as many different versions of mapping assets as we do applications that come in, but it's really giving us the perspective, and therefore your visitors, ultimately, the perspective of where these cultural assets are located, how they relate to one another, and where it fits within the proposed district. So related to this, some thoughts on the mapping process and particularly on walkability and the size of the proposed district. We've seen some applications come in that propose quite a large district or one that has some physical barriers to walkability, like highway overpasses, for instance. I believe that this happens, and I've seen it happen most often when local efforts are focused more on not leaving any asset out, not leaving anyone out of the application, rather than prioritizing the visitor experience. And that's what I'd like to underscore from the very beginning is walkability is not defined solely by linear distance, but by the quality of the experience, how easily and enjoyably visitors can immerse themselves in the cultural offerings of the district. So one tip that I can urge, and some of our applicants do this very, very well indeed, we urge the local steering committee or the Cultural District Commission, if they've already been formed, to walk the district they're proposing. There are some applications that have come in recently where they simply haven't walked it. Um, so I'm just asking that you literally put yourself in the shoes of a visitor. Make sure that you are comfortable walking the district. If you have a large district, and we do have a couple that are quite large, there is the possibility and there's the flexibility of breaking it up into sub-districts. That is a conversation that's very unique to the district we're looking at. But just know that if you are thinking within your community of a district and it's very, it's say over a mile in length, again, that's a linear perspective. Um, we can talk about how to approach this, either breaking it up into sub-districts or creating, we actually have two of our municipalities that have two separate districts. So there's flexibility there, but just as you're exploring this, putting yourself in the shoes of a visitor. Um, Back onto the steps here. Step number 3 in this process is appointing of the Cultural District Commission. Now, there's flexibility afforded here. There are 3 different models for appointing a Cultural District Commission. You may create a new board or commission. It could be a Cultural District Commission. It can be an Arts and Culture Commission. Either one is acceptable. That's one option. A second option is to assign to an existing board or commission and create an advisory subcommittee um, to that commission. Or then the third option is to assign the cultural district oversight to an existing board or commission. This is unique to where you are. Once again, your DRSO or me at the Office of the Arts can sort of help talk through what the options are and which one might be right for your community. There is a community representation requirement as well on the commission. So commission members should include at least one representative from each of these 6 categories. The municipality itself should be represented. It could be an elected official, it could be a member of your planning or your economic development staff. Again, there's a lot of flexibility there. If you have a local cultural council or a local arts council, representation from that council, uh, at least one person from cultural organizations within the proposed district, the Historical Society, a museum, ethnic heritage organization, at least one artist who lives and or works in the district should be on the commission. At least one for-profit creative business. That could be a gallery, it could be a theater, it could be anything that is a small business. And then a local business or chamber of commerce or business organization should have representation as well. Um, so step number 4, and I apologize, we are going through this very rapidly, but I wanted to make sure we at least get this out of the way so that we allow plenty of time for conversation. Step number 4 is simply submitting a letter of intent to your DRSO to establish a cultural district. I have up on the screen an example of that from the town of Fairfield that they submitted to their DRSO. And it's just informing the DRSO that they have voted to move forward to apply for designation. And again, there's complete information on all of this on our website. Then step number 5, it's the compiling and submitting your application. So long list, but it's up here in bullet point format. These are the required documents that make up an application for cultural district designation. A little helpful tip right here on our website. We have a sample application, and that is from the City of New London back a couple of years ago when they applied for cultural district designation. And I always think it really helps to look at that model. It has all of the components in there that are right up on this screen. Obviously, if you're from a small town, you may not be able to identify with New London, but again, this is a process and the components that go into an application. I'm not going to read through this, but this is all the information that's required and all the information that we look at. What happens after you submit this application? So your application is first reviewed by your DRSO, and then it's passed along to me at the Office of the Arts. I go through the application with a fine-tooth comb. I note any questions that I have, if I need clarification on anything. I am back in touch with the DRSO to see if they have any concerns, any questions. We have a conversation, basically. We then are back in touch with the applicant, comes through the municipality. So we're back in touch with the applicant, the main contact person that put together the application, with any questions, any concerns. If there's any missing material, we're back in touch. And so I would say that that application, depending upon workload of the DRSO, workload of the Office of the Arts, takes at least a couple of weeks. I'd allow for a couple of weeks for us to get through the application. If there's anything missing, if there's anything that needs to be revised, the municipality has enough, the time that they need in order to do that. We don't have any set in stone, must be done by this date. We don't like it to hang out forever, but we allow the time that you need to make any adjustments. If all is complete with the application, the Office of the Arts will work with you to schedule the review tour. And this is the next step after formal application. A group from DECD and our partner organizations will be invited to attend the review tour in your proposed district. The review tour itself includes an hour-long walking tour of the district. So the fact that it's only an hour means we will not be able to visit every single site listed. But anyone who is joining us on this review tour, I've provided them in advance with your full application so they can become familiar with what's being proposed. So we do this hour-long walking tour of the district, meeting with the Cultural District Commission and top elected official and others that you identify within your district to discuss your applications and your plans for the district. All if that all goes well, and you are approved, and we do, you will receive, if we get to the point of scheduling a review tour and all goes well on that, you will know by the end of that review tour if you've been approved as a cultural district. We don't keep that a secret, or it's not a mystery. If all that goes well, then we begin to work with you and the Office of the Lieutenant Governor to schedule a formal announcement in your cultural district. So, I want to share a little bit about the outcomes, the impact of cultural districts so far. While this is still a relatively new program in Connecticut, as I had mentioned, the legislature created the enabling legislation in 2019. And then it took a couple of years and we accepted our first cultural district in 2021. So, it's not been terribly long, but so far we're hearing some really positive feedback. The Bristol Cultural District states that having a cultural district is a component of their comprehensive approach to downtown revitalization. In Norwalk, they recognize the critical importance of their cultural district as a community gathering place where people experience connection and shared experiences. Weathersfield views the creation of the cultural district as an important step in formalizing the long-standing partnerships and collaborations that are intended to boost tourism and promote destinations in Old Weathersfield. And then in the town of Manchester, they have done some significant work in long-term comprehensive planning. Arts and culture and encouraging creative entrepreneurs to locate in the community is considered critical to a vibrant community. This is according to the Plan of Conservation and Development in the town of Manchester. Additionally, this year we are compiling data and organizational metrics and the financial impacts of approved cultural districts. I've just received a bunch of data from our 15 cultural districts. So by this time next year, we're going to be able to begin comparing longer term outcomes and impacts of the program. So what we provide in addition to help with the process, while designation as a Connecticut Cultural District does not currently come with grant funding from the state of Connecticut, the Office of the Arts does provide valuable statewide marketing and visibility. So we work with our colleagues, the Office of the Arts works with our colleagues in the Office of Tourism to have created a dedicated feature on the state's tourism website, ctvisit.com, which received 9.4 million views last year. And then, as I mentioned before, Office of the Arts has created a partnership with Fox 61 to feature Connecticut cultural districts. So these segments air each Friday in the 10 a.m. news hour on Fox 61. Each month, a new cultural district is featured. So we're starting our 2026 program in March. They are in-studio interviews, can be artists, business owners, town officials. Again, that's unique to the cultural district being featured. And there's extensive social media push and extensive digital boosts, as well as promos and digital advertising. These segments, the 2025 program that we did, they're all posted on fox61.com. And as I said, we've renewed this partnership for 2026. So we'll be able to feature all of our cultural districts in this 2-year period. To date, The state has approved 15 cultural districts, and we have more in the pipeline. A couple of applications that are in, and more that are being worked on right now. And one of the, I think, more rewarding early outcomes of this program is the local partnerships that have developed and deepened between the creative and the business communities. Um, and also some excellent examples of local and state elected officials that are champions of the cultural district program and arts and culture in Connecticut. So, in addition to that, the Office of the Arts helps to facilitate a statewide network of cultural districts and peer knowledge sharing. We host quarterly meetings of the cultural districts with the DRSOs. Two of these meetings are virtual. Two of them are in person in cultural districts around the state. So we actually get out on the ground and get to experience each one of the cultural districts. So that is a quick sprint through the process. Here is my contact information right here. Again, links in the chat for more information both about the process and about the marketing of cultural districts and some really fabulous photographs of these districts themselves. So with that, I think I want to stop sharing all of this stuff and open it up to questions. Lily, I don't know if you want to moderate this.
Sure, happy to. I see that Sabrina, you asked a question in the chat. Feel free to either come off mute or I can go ahead and read it, whatever you prefer.
Thank you, Lily. Hi, Kimberly. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. My name is Sabrina Davis. I work at the South Central Regional Council of Governments, SCROG, serving the Greater New Haven area. I'm wondering if you're able to share if there are any pending applications in the Greater New Haven area, New Haven County.
Oh, really good question. Thank you, Sabrina, for that. Nothing pending right now, but I used to live in the greater New Haven area before I moved up to central Connecticut. There are any number of communities, like there are any number of communities across the state of Connecticut that could qualify for this. So I definitely want to encourage that. I think with SCROG being, serving the function that you do as a regional planning organization, I'm happy to come and speak to your communities, or if you want to put me in touch, or if we want to do a, three-way, four-way call with the DRSO,
Mm-hmm.
happy at any time to
Oh,
do that.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful. I'll make note of that. Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you, Kimberly.
sure.
Go ahead, Lynn.
Hi, I'm Lynn Worthington. I'm a selectman and chair of my sustainability team in Kent, Connecticut. I
Yes.
remember when this first was announced, the cultural districts, I remember that there was something about it had to be a walk, everything in the district had to be walkable. Is that still something that is true, or has that been relaxed a little bit? Because our town and our cultural entities are kind of spread out.
They are, although I will tell you, the entire Office of the Arts staff was in Kent. We're led by Rufus Durham, who you
Mm.
know very well,
Mhm.
the executive director of the Connecticut Arts Alliance, for those of you who don't know him. And I find Kent, the downtown of Kent, to be extremely walkable. Yes, there are some cultural assets that are a little bit farther afield, like the Eric Sloan Museum. I don't know that you would walk to Sloan from the downtown in Kent. Walkability, again, I go back to that slide about defining walkability. And this is, yes, it is relative to individual ability to walk at a great distance. I think it's how everything hangs together. Does it go from site to site to site? And does it do so in a cohesive way? This is nothing that's set in stone. It's relative to the place. I personally feel that Kent is an ideal cultural district, quite honestly. I really do. It's one of those smaller town cultural districts that's quite special. And Lord knows you have a lot of cultural and arts assets there.
Thanks.
Please go ahead, Keisha.
Good morning from Middletown. My question revolves around, is there a nucleus to these cultural districts as far as thinking from the perspective of a visitor, as far as the destination? Do cultural districts start in one place? Like if you have a main street, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, how do you achieve such a long main street? Where
Mm,
do they start? How do they know
mm,
where to start? What
mm.
brings them in, and what does that look like in these
Yeah, really. Thank you, Keisha. Yeah, a really good question, sort of a fundamental question. I think, and especially for someplace that is as large as Middletown is, that's sort of a classic, if we're talking about the downtown, a classic Main Street. It is long, it is wide, a ton of arts and culture assets, a ton of businesses. I think really where it starts, and so much of this in Middletown has been done already in terms of identifying where those assets are on a map so that you can visually see them. In a place like Middletown, um, you could have the option of really sort of proposing that the entire downtown be a cultural district, or you could break it up into sub-districts depending upon if there, and I know there are unique characteristics. You could have the North End Cultural District, you could have the downtown, there are just a lot of options there. It doesn't, though, really start, in my experience so far, it doesn't really start with a place. It really is that mapping of what do we have here in the district that we're looking at, in the district that we're thinking of proposing, and then just seeing how it all hangs together. So it starts with the inventory, I think. And then if it's something that you feel and there's active discussion about, is this too large a district to be walkable? Does it not hang together particularly well? Then exploring what the options are. And I think that that's where a conversation with your designated regional service organization, your steering committee or commission. I'm happy to be on that in that conversation as well, just to sort of talk it through a little bit.
Jill, I see your question in the chat. Would you like me to repeat it or do you want to come off mute?
Trying to unmute. There I am. Hello, good morning. Oh, thank you for this. So I live in Wethersfield and I was involved with Wethersfield coming on board a few years ago. And I remember what a collective effort it was. And I'm just so proud to see some of the images that you chose and the feedback that you're getting there. But now I'm working in Cheshire, and Cheshire does not have a distinct downtown. We're trying to build one through Ball and Socket Arts. So, where we have Arts Place and we have access to the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, we're working with the Historical Society. We have a beautiful gallery. And I was just kind of curious if you had thoughts on your end or if you visited, because we're getting started, I guess.
Yeah, good, Jill. I'm glad to hear. Well, now that you have experience of going through this in Wethersfield, it can be extremely valuable. The Ball and Socket area, that's the West Main Street. Is that what
Yes.
it's commonly referred to? Yeah. I think also an ideal location for a cultural district for those reasons and those assets that you just mentioned. I do remember several years ago, and this was previous administrations within the town of Cheshire itself. Um, and just by way of, background, before I came to work for DECD in 2022, I started there. I had been with Connecticut Main Street Center for 22 years. And so the whole Main Street revitalization, that kind of place-based economic and community development is what I did prior to cultural districts. And so I remember meeting in Cheshire with town leaders at that point. And yes, while downtown Cheshire, where town hall is located and all of that, that's a little more auto oriented. I mean, there are buildings,
Mhm.
there's a certain density there, but out in the West Main Street area, that's kind of been on my radar for a while. Just watching the progress there. And I believe is Lydia Blaisdell part
Yes,
of the efforts there because I know I've seen her at many of the New London Cultural District events as well.
right.
So yeah, I think there is such a concentration, even as it's developing there, of great assets, and that connection to the Farmington Canal Trail is really, really important. There are a number of our cultural districts that have trails and parks, and that's walking trails, biking trails, hiking trails. That's an important piece of this if you have it. If you don't, it doesn't mean you can't be a cultural district. It's just another asset, really.
Okay. So we'll stay on your radar and keep in touch.
Absolutely. And I don't know who off the top of my head, I can't remember which DRSO Cheshire is part of.
Yeah,
Um,
we have overlap.
okay.
So I know we
Okay.
do some things with New Haven and some things with Waterbury.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Janika, I see your question in the chat, and then we'll go to Sabrina.
Thank you.
Janika, do you want? Oh, great.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I was just curious if there were some sort of Office of the Arts like information hubs, a kiosk, a bulletin board, a something at each one that kind of shares what Office of the Arts might be doing or points people from one cultural district to where the others might be, for more of a connected experience. Just curious.
Mm, good idea. Janika is always filled with good ideas. Seriously. There is no such thing right now. Um, but it's not a bad idea. And in terms of branding, and in terms of marketability and raising the visibility in the minds of the public about what this whole thing is as far as a cultural district. So that's one of those things on my list of great ideas that we haven't even talked about yet. So thank you for that one, Janika.
Great. Sabrina, please go ahead.
Thank you. I have two more questions. One is, are there any application deadlines?
No, this is rolling admission. So no application deadlines, and it is as you're ready. And as a matter of fact, even though I flew through the process and the steps of application, it usually takes, I'm going to say usually in the short time I've been here, but it is not unusual for the process to take a year, even going on 2 years. So there is no rush. It is when you're ready. That's really, really important because the community has to be at the table. They have to contribute your sustainable CT. You understand this. They have to contribute to this conversation and to the exploration of this. And so that's as long as it needs to take, is what it is.
Thank you. And the second question is, I know in the application slide, it referenced a municipal plan of conservation and development. SCROG is going to be doing their next plan of conservation and development regionally. Would that be something that a municipality could reference as well in their application?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, any kind of, look, our DRSOs are very intentionally partners in this as regional organizations and regional planning organizations and the process of regional planning as well. With a couple of our cultural districts, they reference their SEDS plan, so their economic development regions as well. So that is all to me really, really important. Those are important indicators of the outreach to the public, of the public acknowledgement of arts and culture, as driving some of their decisions. We have a couple different community development goals currently within the Office of the Arts. One is community problem solving, where arts and culture are at the table as part of that problem solving. And then the other one is to create an environment where creative businesses can thrive, which is how I view, the one of the long-term goals of the cultural district program. So the more voices and the more perspective, and quite honestly, with the regional planning organizations, there's a lot of expertise there that can be really helpful to a community.
Thank you.
Great. Gina, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Gino DiGiovanni. I'm from Derby. My question is, has there been any discussion on any cities or towns in the lower Naugatuck Valley area? As you know from Derby, we recently just completed our market analysis for the Sterling Opera House, which I sit on the commission as chairman there. Mm-hmm. And our downtown 34 project is pretty much complete. So we have a blank canvas there. And I just wanted to know if there has been any discussions. We're also starting our POCD as well. So I'm just trying to get ahead of things as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission as well. So I just wanted to see where anything is, and we're just getting in on the ground floor. So, and thank you very much, Kimberly.
Thank you, Gino, and thank you for raising your hand and bringing that to my attention. I'm glad to hear all of that, quite honestly. I would advise now the DRSO, I imagine for Derby, is the Arts and Cultural Collaborative from the Waterbury region. So Diane Plock is their executive director. So that will be your first call to explore cultural district designation. But I am, as I've said with other people, and I am happy to be on that call, and I'm happy to come to Derby to talk in person and to tag team with Diane on this. We have not had an inquiry from the Naugatuck Valley yet, but all of those towns that dot that entire Naugatuck River, any one of them could establish a cultural district if that's what the community wants, and that's what the conversation is. So I would say next step, be in touch with your DRSO. You can CC me on that, and then we'll come to a time, identify a time where we can all get together and have a conversation.
Great. Thank you so much for this meeting. It's been very informational, and I think it's going to help out greatly to start this off. Appreciate it.
Great. Leslie, please go ahead.
Oh, yes. Hi, good morning. I'm from Darien, Connecticut, member of the Garden Club and an active member in Connecticut Advocates for Trees, which is statewide gathering. And I was just thinking that maybe there's an opportunity to tap into some of the educational institutions across the state and their art departments and art chairs, and then lower age-wise down to the high school educational level, because that might be a great source of, budding entrepreneurs, innovation, and maybe there's a connection there for future collaborations as you expand the concept across Connecticut.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie, and hello to Darien. I think those are great thoughts. I like definitely the idea of sort of helping to bring the message of cultural districts and community development and the creative economy in general to sort of the higher education end of this. I will say that in a number of cultural district applications, there have been really excellent sections about the K through 12 arts curriculum, where they are already doing a really great job of bringing kids under the age of 18 or under the age of 20 into the cultural district activities and into the arts and culture conversation. So I love to see where that comes up as a topic. Occasionally, we'll get an application that omits that section, any reference to K through 12. Um, and I kind of push back on that. Well, I don't kind of, I push back on that to say, provide any information you have. And if you don't know, this is your perfect opportunity in the application process to reach out to the K through 12 arts leader, whoever that is, whether it's a faculty member or an administrative position, to find out what the opportunities are for collaboration and for engaging youth in the work of arts and culture as part of community development.
Great. And just one other aspect on the other end of the spectrum from a higher education perspective, I know certain MBA curriculum are interested in inspiring more creative skills so that's an area that might be really interesting to do a deeper dive study, which is partially what I'm focused on doing next, to articulate some of the programming that's really excellent. MIT, for example, has an innovation initiative, and Stanford, and I've had some conversations with higher ed leaders about how something like that can percolate forward.
Yeah, thank you. I am not involved in this program, but our director, Liz Shapiro, Director of Arts Preservation and Museums for the state of Connecticut, is the lead in the Office of the Arts on a collaboration we have with Yale University right now and the Yale Innovation Lab. And the Midnight Oil Collective. And so they're in a cohort as we speak right now this year of connecting a certain select number of theaters, some larger, some very small, with venture capitalists that want to invest in a certain project or a certain program. And so Liz Shapiro, our director, has been, I want to connect you with her because it's all about that connection between our agency and higher education in the creative economy.
Beautiful. And University of Chicago has a Center for Social Responsibility, which is called Rustandy, and they very much sort of connect social impact and dollars and innovation with students and startup activities.
Right.
So that might be another example. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I see there's just a couple comments in the chat. Margaret or Jill, if either of you want to chime in, feel free. Otherwise, if there's any other questions.
No, my comment, I was going to ask the question, but then Kimberly shared about some of the initiatives that are going on beyond the cultural district. And I, happen to live in northeastern Connecticut, which, I know that there are some good communities up in this region that, could be good cultural district. But there's a lot of small communities that will never qualify. But yet the arts, and especially artists events that happen around, gardening and art and, performances are also wonderful. And so, I just, in the long run, I think that these small communities also need desperately to develop their community around things that make them unique and special and celebrate that. So I'm glad that that's on the state's radar, because I just feel like there's another whole level of communities that a cultural district will never work for them.
Thank you, Margaret. I understand that point very definitely. Although I will say I would love to see applications come in from really tiny places that maybe have identified, a handful, like 5 assets, but then it's how these assets are starting to work together and the various events around it. Liz Shapiro has said from the beginning, once the legislation was written and turned over to the Office of the Arts to implement this program, she would love to see a cultural district, from all 169, but her point being, it doesn't matter how large or how small, it is a possibility. It's really more of what's the conversation on the community level? How do these things all relate to one another, even if it's a really small area? And is that I'll use from my Main Street days, the term, is that a transformation strategy that can help local economic community development, no matter how small the area. So I would love to see whether I'm originally from Northwestern Connecticut myself, similar in that there are some very tiny places, and I grew up in the town of Colebrook, the third smallest town in Connecticut, where in the center of town there is the Congregational Church, the town hall, which doubles as the historical society, and the general store building on the National Register of Historic Places. And that's it. Well, who's to say there couldn't be a cultural district there? It comes down to the programming of all of these things together, I think. So I agree. I think that as young as this program is, there are certain places they're going to rise to the fore right away. But I think as the cultural district program continues, I would love to see applications come in from some of the smaller towns and smaller places.
Great. It looks like we're coming up on time. If anyone has any more last minute questions, we can take one more. Otherwise, I think we're all set to wrap up. And thank you, Kimberly, for your amazing presentation and for all of your great questions. This was a really great conversation.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me.
Great. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.